Chairman.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Performance, Governance and Audit Committee on Thursday, the 16th of November 2023. My name is Councillor Vanessa Bell, and I'm the Chairperson of this committee. There are just a few housekeeping issues to run through. Members, we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak, and I will invite you to speak at the appropriate time. Could I ask members to avoid approaching the top table, as this could create interference with the cameras and live stream? And please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of the microphones. Therefore, can I ask that when invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and turn it off when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers, and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. Finally, I would like to welcome, attended remotely, Mr Hewitson and Mr O'Dunsey from Deloitte, Council's external auditors, and in the chamber we have our new colleagues from BDO. Thrown me there by waving at me. Our new colleagues from BDO, the Council's internal auditors, Mr Aaron Winter and Mr Andrew Billingham. On my left. Also in attendance in the chamber for the internal audit item of business is Mr Paul Brooks from Chelmsford City Council. So thank you very much, everyone. Item 2, apologies for absence. We have none as far as I'm aware, which moves us on to item 3, minutes of the last meeting. It's recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of September 2023, found on pages 5 to 12, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Can we, any matters of accuracy before we agree those? No, can we agree those by sense? Agreed. Super, thank you. Item 4, matters arising. So it's recommended that the matters arising from the minutes held on the meeting on the 28th of September, found on pages 13 to 14, are noted. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Lovely. Item 5, disclosure of interest. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interest as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. Item 6, we have no public participation. So let's move straight on to item 7, which you can find on pages 15 to 56. The report of the External Auditor on the audit for the year ended 2021. So we have Mr Lucas, Mr Hewitson, Mr O'Dunsey and Ms Jaya remotely as well, I believe, on this item. Who's going first?
If I'll just introduce the report, and then I'll pass to Paul Hewitson, who's the Associate Partner at Deloitte.
Super, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to provide the Council's External Auditor, Deloitte, with the opportunity to report the key findings of their audit to those charged with governance prior to them issuing their opinion on the 2020-21 Statement of Accounts. And their report is appended to this at Appendix 1. So Deloitte have completed their substantive work on the audit of that year's accounts, and it's within the terms of reference of this committee that there is a requirement to review their opinion on those accounts. I think that's probably all I'll say in context, and I'll pass over to Paul to then present the findings of his report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, just some guidance, if possible, please. What's the committee's preference? Do you want me to take this page by page, or do I assume that it's read and just pick out the highlights?
Members, are we happy with highlights?
Highlights, please.
Highlights, please. Mr Hewitson would be fine. Thank you.
Okay then, excellent. So if I take you to page 19 of your pack, you have the outline status of our audit. As of the date of issuing this report, our audit was almost complete. We've got a few housekeeping matters to attend to, which we intend to address tomorrow and in the early part of next week. And based on the work we've concluded, then I anticipate being able to issue an unqualified, unmodified audit opinion on the affairs of the council for the year ended 31st March 2021. I realise that it's going a long way back in time, but we have finally got here. As I say on page 19 there, so I'm going to keep trying to quote my own page numbers, so give me a second with that. The reasons for the delays are set out on that page. There was a significant rework required in terms of the agent versus principal error. We've had a few corrections needed for property, plant and equipment valuations. We had difficulty obtaining evidence in respect of the gross internal areas in our revalued assets. The restatement of the accounts needed to correct for the failure to depreciate major assets. There was a restatement needed the prior year primary statements because they didn't balance. The cash flow needed restating for the same reason, and members may be aware of the significant hoo-ha there was about infrastructure assets at the back end of last year that affected the whole sector, which caught you up as well. We do say there, we'll give you an oral update. These matters are now, I'm pleased to say, concluded, and I am satisfied that thanks to the efforts of the finance team and of my colleagues, that we now believe that financial statements are fairly stated and present a true and fair position of the council's state of affairs. Taking you on over the page to page 20, the other element of work that we have to do is our value for money work. In order to sign the council's opinion on the financial statements, I need to have satisfied myself that there are no significant weaknesses in the arrangement to skew value for money. I'm happy to say that the work we've concluded does give me that confidence that there are no significant weaknesses. You will, in due course, get an auditor's annual report, which will set out the detail of my findings in respect of value for money, and there will be some recommendations in there. However, none of them are sufficiently severe that I believe that I need to raise a significant weakness in your audit opinion, which is as good as it gets. You know, we don't do superlatives, we just do no significant weakness. Just closing off that page 20, there are a number of special powers, which sounds very grand for what it is, that the auditor has to issue reports in the public interest or to issue statutory notices and the like. We did not receive any formal queries or objections from electors in respect to these financial statements, and there were no matters brought to my attention which required me to exercise my powers under the Local Audit and Accountability Act. So, taking you on to page 23 of your pack, what you have here are the significant risks, and that runs through page 23 and 24. And we had two significant risks. One was on the management override of controls, which we are required to assume is a risk in all financial statement audits as a result of things like Enron and WorldCom and Parliament and Patisserie Valerie, all these names that you might recognise from major corporate collapses and audit failures. So we are required to assume that there is a risk of fraud in the management override of controls, and we set out on this page the work that we do in respect to that. So we look at your controls, we test a sample of journals, we look at your accounting estimates, and I'm happy to say that we didn't identify any issues with management override of controls, and we didn't have any significant matters to raise with the committee in respect of that.
Brilliant.
In respect of the COVID-19 related income, over the page on 24, this was our significant risk in respect of revenue recognition. The key things here were making sure that you'd recognise the revenue you were entitled to and you were applying the agent versus principal concept correctly. Now, this was one of the things that resulted in a very significant correction to the financial statements. We did look at the design and implementation of your controls, and as we set out in our control recommendations on pages, your pages 31 onwards, we concluded there weren't any effective controls in respect of the evaluation of COVID grants between agent and principal. Now, that might sound harsh, it was a bit of a one-off, and it's very difficult, but you cast your mind back to where we were at that time, it was a very different world. So whilst it is a significant risk, whilst it is a significant finding, I wouldn't necessarily read anything particularly broader into the fact that that control wasn't designed and therefore wasn't implemented. We did require significant correction to the financial statements. The CIAS did change significantly. We also had to have a new note added to the accounts to set out the agent versus principal arrangement. But again, I'm happy to say that here we are now, many months on, we have got there, and we are now satisfied that the financial statements are correct. In terms of the defined benefit pension scheme on page 25, I don't propose to say an awful lot about that. It's a big number. You get the actuaries to advise you on it. We did have a very small issue on it around Goodwin, but other than that, we didn't have a lot to say. But because it's such a big number, because it is a judgment, we are required to shout about it. In terms of the valuation of property assets on page 26, again, not a significant risk, but an area of focus just because of the scale of it. We did encounter a number of issues here. So we found some errors in the actual valuations themselves, which were corrected. We found some errors in the application of depreciation in respect of valued properties. We did experience some difficulties in obtaining evidence around the inputs to the valuation. But again, whilst we've made a number of recommendations and whilst a number of corrections have been made to the financial statements, we are now satisfied that your financial statements in respect of property asset valuations are now fairly stated. There are a lot of recommendations in this space in our report. Obviously, you're not going to address them for the 21 accounts, the 22 accounts, or the 23 accounts because you've already written all of those. So it's given for your information to address going forward for the 23-24 financial statements. We do identify the errors that we found at the bottom of page 26 on the right hand side. None of them were so big, none of the remaining ones were so big to cause me any great concern. The only one that was significant we got you to adjust for. In respect of infrastructure assets, which was a big issue for the sector, we worked with the team. We identified that some things you had as infrastructure assets weren't really infrastructure assets. We identified some things that were infrastructure assets that didn't really exist because they were double counted. You have adopted the new approach to infrastructure assets, which is in line with the guidance. So quite a lot of corrections, a bit of documentation that needs to be tightened up, just housekeeping stuff. But again, I'm going to keep saying it, we got there eventually. It's been painful, but we're now satisfied that this balance is fairly stated. I'm going to take you past page 28 because it talks about value for money. I've already told you all you need to know. I don't have any significant weaknesses. My report will follow in due course. I will then take you past page 29. Page 30 is just some fairly standard boilerplate about what we do and don't do on your narrative report and your annual governance statement. Pages 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41 are all recommendations which are given for your attention and for your actions. Some of them are repeats of earlier recommendations, some of them are new. I don't propose to read them out to you. I'm sure if members have got any they want to dig into, we can do that in the questions. So I'll take you past all of those pages. I'll take you to the uncorrected misstatements on page 44. So the reason I draw your attention to these is obviously we're going to ask the members to approve the financial statements for signing. It's important that you understand what errors are still present there, and also the accounting standards require, well, the auditing standards require me to ask you to make these adjustments. I would suggest that before taking a judgment on that, you would take advice from your Section 151 officer. But to emphasise, these errors are not so significant that they would stop me forming a clean opinion. I am content that they're not material, but I need the committee to formally document their decisions on it. In terms of the errors that we found there, you've got One, which is a Section 106 grant, which you're deferring, but the conditions around it mean that you can never give it back. So because you never give it back under the financial reporting standards, you've got control over it, therefore it should be revenue. You had some incorrect classification of PPE as infrastructure assets, which I've talked about already. The capitalisation rate of by DVS on Springfield Industrial Estate, that fell outside our expected range. So we've got a bit of a misstatement on the PPE value there. And then there's an NNDR payroll balance not linked to a specific NNDR creditor, which we're suggesting should just be removed. So they are my errors that are remaining after the corrections that have been made, and there have been a lot of corrections. So as I said, I do need to formally document their decision in respect of the uncorrected misstatements, and also in respect to the disclosure of the statement you'll find over the page, which is just an analysis point within your cash flow statement. I assume, Chair, you take that at the end of the report rather than now?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm going to take you straight past page 46 and 47 and 48 and 49 and 50 and 51, which is given for your information, that just explains what we are doing to raise the quality of our audits in response to feedback from our regulator. I will take you past page 52, which is again just context to explain to you what our responsibilities are and are not in respect to fraud. On page 53, we talk about reconfirming our independence. This is kind of important. I do need to reconfirm to you that I am independent of the council, and therefore I am still qualified to give you an independent auditor's opinion. On fees, we have previously communicated to this committee the variation to the scale fee. And when we discovered the extensive problems in the financial statements, I did flag up to the committee that this would likely lead to additional audit fees. I have provided an analysis of the audit fees to your finance officer. I don't know how many members, I can't see the members, and I wasn't here when it was originally presented, so I don't know how many members are still in the situation from when we originally presented, but originally, on the 24th of August of 2020, we told them the total proposed fee would be £99,580. That was then revised down because of some changes to scope to £88,580. The additional work that we've done and the hours that's taken now means that I have a total proposed audit fee of £99,500 in total. For committee members' information, the way this works is we provide a proposal to the authority and then attempt to seek agreement. Whether we can or cannot agree, it's for the PSAA who own the contract to adjudicate on what a fair fee is. We will make our submissions to them probably in early January, setting out our basis for the fee variation, and they will then seek your opinion as to what you feel the audit fee should be. I guess I should also highlight that we haven't provided any non-audit services to the authority, and that's it. There's a glossary of terms at the back, which we were asked to put in because some of the stuff in here is a bit auditory.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Does anybody else wish to speak on this? No, I mean, Mr. Dunseed, have you anything to?
No, Toby is here in case you ask me a really difficult question.
Okay, okay, lovely. Right, thank you. So, nothing from any other officers? Lovely. Okay, so the recommendation, which is found on page 15 of the report, is that members consider the report of the External Auditor and Appendix 1. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Members, comments, please. Yes, please, Councillor Spenceley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for a very detailed and helpful report. I've got a question really for Ms. Lucas. Obviously, this predates your arrival by quite a few years. And so I'm not going to dwell on the asset register and the failure to depreciate assets. There's some very robust management comments, which I think are really helpful. But there's just one comment on page 27 and 34, which touches perhaps on a cultural issue, which is, to quote, "The Council does not have a clearly documented process for the determination of the useful economic life of its assets, with the process relying on the experience of the asset and maintenance personnel, with minimal documentation being captured as to how the assets UEL have been determined." And that kind of chimes with things we picked up from peer review and perhaps other meetings, that maybe, is it fair to say that we're perhaps moving towards a more formal process of documenting things and setting up properly controlled processes where things might have been a little bit informal and undocumented in the past?
Ms. Lucas.
Thank you. So, I mean, we have had sort of policies in place in terms of the useful economic life of different kinds of assets, but as you say, they might not have been kind of quite as clearly documented as we would have liked. I think there's an agreement that there needs to be a kind of, more clearly documented process between the asset team and the finance team and our valuers in terms of what those policies are and what those useful economic lives are. I think the more general point around the ongoing work around documenting our assets, clearly having a good asset register and making sure the information around our assets is more clearly retained. You're correct, there is a piece of work that is already underway in terms of making sure that is robust, and that should aid us in terms of our future accounts and audit work.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Stan.
Just a couple of points, really. Just to clarify, is Deloitte's doing the following year's audit? I can't remember.
Lucas.
Yeah, so the next, the last 2 years, Deloitte's will be auditing those accounts as well, so 21, 22 and 22, 23. And then we have a new auditor, KPMG, in place from 23, 24 onwards.
Thank you, Chair. So the next question maybe is a bit relevant now. And I was going to actually ask the External Auditor if there were any risks, because I can't remember. It's such a long time ago. It's really unfair asking us to remember, a few years ago when we was all up onto all this. Is there any risk? Because I know it was to do with assets, which is why the report was delayed, and the COVID grants. Because we was originally led to believe the COVID grants, it was just an error on where they were actually put on the accounts. But then I think you found it wasn't. So thank you for actually putting us right on there, even though it seems to have cost us a heck of a lot of money. I understand we had to do it. But are there any more changes coming from central government that may change the way the auditors are operating again? Because I could be wrong, but is it my understanding that it was the government who made you look at our assets differently, or was it a standard, an auditor's standard that we had failed to identify? Thank you.
And that's one for Mr. Hewitson.
It is, yes. And forgive me if I have not quite followed the question, but the issues I think you're referring to is we had the COVID grants, which you weren't helped by government because they wanted you to make your own mind up as to whether or not you were agent or principal, rather than just saying these grants are agent, these grants are principal, which I never really understood why they didn't mandate it, because that's how you get consistency, but they left it to your judgment. In terms of the asset piece, I wonder if the member is referring to the infrastructure assets, where there was government intervention on a change of accounting policy. Now, that was instigated because auditors were finding at other authorities, not like yourselves, where there were things like highways assets, and they couldn't work out what asset they still had and how much it was worth, and the additions over time hadn't been recorded properly, and it was getting to the point where the auditors just couldn't form an opinion. And so government stepped in order to unblock that logjam with the statutory instrument that they released on Christmas Day, I think it's dated the 25th of December, to give auditors a way out of that particular mire. In terms of central government information that's coming down the track that might affect the way the audit is operated, the only thing that I'm hearing at the moment, but it is not yet formalised and not yet confirmed, there is talk about instigating a backstop date of the 31st of March 2024, by which all audits before that must be completed or must have a disclaimer opinion issued. Alongside that, they're saying the auditors must complete the VFM work for 22 and 23, even if they can't complete the financial statements audit. Now, that's not been confirmed, it's not been released, it is at the minute merely a rumour going around the sector. So watch this space on that in terms of other things that might change the way we have to operate.
Thank you.
Can I
Mr.
have one
Hewitson.
more?
Yes, please.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you very much. It was lovely. Cheers. Thank you. So I'm being an optimist tonight. So obviously you've done a lot of the donkey work and you're going to be our external auditor for next year. So based on that, what in your expert of opinion, or when will we be getting our next year's accounts ready to come to this committee? Because you've done all the hard work now, haven't you? So it should be pretty straightforward.
21, 22.
Yeah, 21, 22.
21, 22.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we have already commenced our audit of the 21-22 financial statements. We are trying to get as much of that done pre-Christmas as we can. If we don't get the work finalised pre-Christmas, there will be a hiatus until we can pick it back up again in March, because January, February is an incredibly busy time for corporate auditors. But running alongside that is, as I say, the threat of a backstop date that might mean at some point in March we have the down tools. What I think we probably do absolutely have to do is to focus on trying to get the value for money work done before then.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Stan? Fabulous. Any other members? No. Well, thank you for your very, very comprehensive report, Mr. Hewitson. Members, can we agree by assent the recommendation? Agree. Marvellous. Thank you very much.
Chair, sorry, could the committee please just document their conclusion in respect of the unadjusted errors and their decision whether to adjust or not, please?
Yes. Members?
What, you want us just to note it, Chair?
We need a decision, Mr. Hewitson is saying.
So if I may...
If you could elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, the question for the committee is whether or not you intend to adjust for the remaining errors that I found remain uncorrected. I suggest you take advice from your finance officer before making a decision, but I am required to ask you to adjust for them, and if you decide not to document why you're not going to. But I would strongly suggest you take advice from your finance officer.
I am taking advice from our finance officer as we speak, and that advice is that we do not adjust, is it not?
Yeah, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I think as Mr. Hewitson has said, it's in the gift of the committee to decide whether they want us to adjust for these unadjusted misstatements. In my view, because they are not material and because the work of the audit has been concluded and the auditors are happy that the accounts are not materially misstated, the reasons for those unadjusted misstatements are set out in the report. My recommendation would be that we don't adjust for those, because otherwise we are going to then delay the process in terms of signing off the accounts further.
That makes sense to me. Members, are we happy?
I so propose, Chair.
I'll second that then, Councillor Thompson. Members, can we agree then not to adjust by assent? Agreed. Thank you, Mr. Hewitson.
Thank you very much.
Super. So that brings us on to item 8, final statement of accounts 2021, which is on pages 57 to 182. So I'm going to hand over to you, Ms. Lucas, and then to bring in anyone else as you wish. Is that?
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
So this is essentially a companion report to the previous report you've considered, in that it's got the actual final statement of accounts appended to the report, and I'm asking you to consider those accounts in light of the opinion you've just heard from Deloitte's in terms of their view on the nature of those accounts. So yeah, I'm presenting the statement of accounts to you, and I'm asking that, given that we've just got to finalise, just last couple of small bits, that delegated authority is given to myself in conjunction with the chairperson and vice chairperson of the committee, just to do the final sign off of the approval of the statement of accounts after this meeting, including the annual governance statement, which members would have already considered at previous committee, and the letter of representation that needs to be signed by myself and the auditors as well. So, I mean, in the terms of the section 3, the summary of key issues, I've just set out that obviously the content of the statement of accounts is determined by statutory requirements, and we're required to comply with the relevant professional standards, including the code of practice. There is a deadline in terms of when we have to publish the approved statement of accounts, or, as has been in this case, due to the delays, an explanation of why it wasn't possible to achieve the publication of those final accounts by the deadline of 30th of September 2021, which we did comply with. As I said, at 3.4, the statement of accounts includes the annual governance statement, which has previously been reviewed and approved by this committee, but has just been slightly updated in terms of bringing it up to the latest position in terms of those governance issues. But that is also reflected in the final statement of accounts, which is appended. And as we said previously, that Deloitte have substantially completed their work and no significant findings have been found, other than the ones that Mr. Hewitson has pointed out. And therefore, yeah, I'm asking for that delegated authority to just sign off the final accounts, unless members have any further questions on those accounts. Thank you.
Thank you. So the recommendation is that delegated authority is given to the Interim Chief Finance Officer in consultation with the Chairperson and Vice Chairperson of the Performance, Governance and Audit Committee for the final approval of the Statement of Accounts for 2020-21, including the Annual Governance Statement and Letter of Representation. Corporate plan may not be achieved. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Thompson, thank you. Members, any comments? Or are we happy to agree that by assent? Agreed. Marvellous. Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, so henceforth we whiz on to item 9, which is the.
Let the others go now.
Anybody may leave now if you have finished. Thank you very, very much for your attendance tonight. So yeah, feel free to go and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much, Chair, and hopefully we'll see you again shortly.
Thank you. Good night, both. Thank you. Right. Internal Audit Report, pages 183 to 184. And I have a cornucopia of officers to help with this item and discuss it. Some in the chamber, some remotely, and of course our colleagues from BDO. So I think now I hand over to Mr. Aaron Winter, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Our first report is our progress report, which is page 185 of your pack. So this is a summary report we periodically bring to this meeting, and it's covering the finalisation of the 22-23 internal audit plan and also our progress of the 23-24 internal audit programme. I'm pleased to say that as part of this report and later in our pack, we've finalised the final review from 22-23, the cybersecurity review, with a substantial opinion on design and moderate opinion on operational effectiveness. What I would say is that those those opinions were already reflected in our head of internal audit opinion for last year. So that means that the results of that report and that finalisation of that report has not altered that opinion. Moving on to 23-24, I'm really pleased with the progress we're making, the engagement we're getting from management. Obviously, a good barometer of our progress is the number of reports you're receiving at each committee. We have another 4 on top of the previous report that we reported at the last meeting we were present at. So final reports are part of our later papers covering equality, diversity and inclusion, sickness and absence management, management of Section 106 and licensing. With regards to the remainder of our plan for 23-24, you will see from our paper we have a number that are already in field work, and a lot of those are closing in on draft report stage prior to Christmas. So I'm confident the profile of reporting will continue to the next meeting that we are present at in March, and the remaining reviews that we've got planned for Q4 are being planned, scoped and will be completed in time as well. So what that brings to conclusion on the 23-24 plan is we're confident that we'll be in a position to issue our annual Head of Internal Audit opinion on time in the summer like we always do. So they were the key highlights of that report. I'll stop there and take any questions if there is any.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions at this point? Mr. Winter? No? You got away with... No? Got away with that one, Mr. Winter? No, that's really good. I should mention that we have also received via email an update from a response from Chelmsford City Council regarding the licensing item, which is 9G. Okay, so we who we go to next? Is it cybersecurity or is it? No, it's below. We've got follow-up of recommendations.
Yep, Chair, that's my one to present today.
Fabulous.
So,
over to you.
thank you very much. So the follow-up report is on page 195 of the pack. As you see, we had 13 recommendations due to be followed up this quarter, and we've confirmed implementation of 12, which is a positive position. I'm pleased to say all recommendations are now complete for 1920. There is only one overdue recommendation for 2021, which is for knowledge management. However, we've confirmed with officers they're still on track to meet the revised implementation date of 31st of March 2024. There are still 2 overdue recommendations for 21-22 for management of property. Again, we've confirmed with officers for one of these they remain on target to meet the revised implementation date of January 2024. The other one was due to be implemented this quarter, but work is still ongoing, so we've agreed a new implementation date for that one of 31st of December 2023. So that's the only one out of the 13 which was not implemented for this quarter. All other outstanding recommendations are not yet due, and yeah, I'm ready to take any questions if anyone has any.
Brilliant, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Billiam, members? Apparently not, which is great. Marvellous. Well, thank you very much, both. So now we come on to cyber security, pages 211 to 226, and I believe we have Grant remotely to Ms. Hully to talk about this. Or do we? No, we have Ms. Cardy.
Ms. Cardy, I believe.
I think you're covering a lot of bases, Ms. Cardy, this evening.
I think maybe the auditors introduce it and then the next.
I'm sorry. I do apologise. Please introduce it. I shall sit back and leave it to you. Thank you.
Well, it's a good barometer. It's good if management want to take ownership of our reports, so it means we're doing something right, which is great. So it's only fair that obviously it is our report, we own that, so therefore I will introduce it. So I already touched on it on my progress report that the cybersecurity review from 22-23 received a substantial design opinion and a moderate operational opinion. And in kind of layman terms, that means that the council have got effective policies, procedures and controls defined. Obviously operationally, it's about how they're then applied and followed, and that's where we found some of the issues that need to be improved. But actually management have already started to take action on a number of these points in the report. Lots in terms of comparison to other councils, this is obviously a hot topic area. We read in the media constantly about public sector organisations being attacked. I heard a number recently of in the thousands, that it's constant each day. What we have here is that it's good that the council has got a number of preventative controls in operation. The 2 areas of improvement are actually the areas of if what happens if something goes wrong. So therefore, the testing of the recovery procedures and ensuring that we can continue the services or reboot the services as quickly as an attack has occurred if any issues occur was one of the issues that we found. But again, that was more about ensuring that it was reflective of the current processes and what the council were doing. And the other area that we flagged as an improvement is the human input, which is obviously the ability to ensure that the staff are aware of what you do, how to identify any sort of a threat, which whether that's phishing or any untoward link that you're sent. And obviously the training compliance in our report does suggest that there is a lot of work to do to ensure that everyone in the council is completing that training. I know from a BDO perspective, we have to do that on an annual basis to ensure that we stay up to date with some of the techniques and that some of the phishing and criminals are trying to use at this current moment in time, because there's always a human element. You only need that one person to click on that link. So, but overall, I'd say it's a really positive opinion. We don't often issue substantial in the area of cybersecurity, so I would definitely take that as a positive. I'm happy to take any questions as management are, I'm sure, as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Winter? Yes, Councillor Stamp.
Are you able, thank you, are you able to tell us if we have been attacked and how many times?
I think that would be a question. I don't want to pass it on to management, but
Well, that way we can tell if you're being successful or not.
well, I've only reviewed the processes that are in place. I'm not in the position to prevent any attacks from occurring. That's actually your IT function, your frontline service that are doing that on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so can I ask the management then, please?
I think that is one for you, Ms. Cody, isn't it?
We are, unlike most organisations, under attack all the time. They're, as you probably find at home as well on your personal devices, they are becoming increasingly sophisticated with bots that can do numerous hits to try and get in, but they have not been successful because of our 3 multi-factor authentication, because of all the things that have been identified in this report and that BDO have checked. And we've also had other external independent verification that our cyber is as robust as it can be. Now, it can never be 100% because we are all prone to attacks and they are very sophisticated, so they do move at a rapid rate to try and get into data and information. But and I think that's shown by the attacks that happen on big organisations, despite the amount of infrastructure and security they have in place. So we have everything that we can have, and as BDO assessed, we are, for our size and our infrastructure, we have robust measures in place.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Councillor Stamp, back to you.
So can we be reassured that all our internal and our staff are actually trained to the level as what was mentioned, because you said about employees and staff being trained? We know we put in some good processes and controls for members, because we've all had to sit there and do this thing, and you have to have 80% to pass this test. So is that still continuing, and are we actually still monitoring? I did see on here about the number of people who've done it, but do you think that is effective, or do we need to look at encouraging our members to make sure that we are filling in this, because we're at risk of sharing things? I've had a few come to me, and I always forward it on to Mr. Hulley, and you know, we've had a few saying, you know, give us an iTunes card, your parents or something has been, yeah. So would you say, in your opinion then, that we as members are up to date and up to scratch and what we should be to safeguard the council, as well as employees of the council? Not just your systems, Miss Cardy, us members.
Yeah, have we all done our big fish, little fish cardboard box training? I have.
We are monitoring that the staff are completed and the members are completed. Now we have a key performance indicator that's reported every month to ensure and really ensure that this key scrutiny is on this.
Brilliant.
We've got a very high level of completions. There are some members who haven't completed them or all of them, so obviously that's for members to take forward, but for the staff we monitor very closely every month. It goes to our CLT and we will remind and even limit the access staff have until they've completed their box fish training.
Brilliant, thank you. Does that answer your query?
It does, but so I know myself I haven't filled some in, so could I request that we all get a reminder, a gentle reminder, because I know that when they came I didn't have the time to do it, and I generally try to do it, so I think other members have struggled to actually complete these, and it is a really good reminder now you've presented this report to actually give us the kick that we require.
They're really quick, they're really easy, straightforward. It's 5-10 minutes, and yeah.
To listen to it, to pass it.
Yes. You do have to concentrate. There was one I confess I didn't, and I didn't pass it first time. And it doesn't let you retake it and count your second score either, which I was most disappointed with, because I expected to get at least 2 bites of the cherry with it, but apparently not. So thank you. Do we have any more cybersecurity questions for either Mr. Winter or Ms. Cardy? No, apparently not. So thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Cardy. So I'm back to you then, Mr. Winter, for EDI, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion.
Thank you. Yeah. So this report is page 227 onwards of your pack. So just to flag, this is an advisory review. So this is about assessing the maturity of the council's kind of ED&I principles, policies, plans and actions. I would flag that the report does bring out that the council was in their infancy in terms of their plans, and this was our ability to support them in that journey. And some of them are longer term ambitions, and the way that the report is designed is to say it's a stepping stone, so you can't just go from kind of step 1 to step 5, and that's how we've then worked with management to develop some of the considerations. That's why it doesn't generate an opinion. This is more about supporting that progress. There are 17 findings, which I would say are 17 considerations. That doesn't mean that they're all necessary to obviously mitigate any particular risk, but what we're finding from these very focused cultural reviews is it's actually a massive encouragement to staff that organisations are investing in this space. It's a great retention tool. People want to work with organisations that really take these topics seriously. As they are low priorities, we're not suggesting that as they are low advisory recommendations, they won't be part of our follow-up programme. However, we have, as you can see in the report, management comments and clear actions that I know management are taking forward and using this to support their journey. So that was all I was going to say on that, but it's quite an elongated report as a result of the number of detail.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I'd like to see the word gender replaced with the word sex, personally, but I believe that's the way that things happen in local government and elsewhere. Thank you very much for that. So I think we're also back to you, Ms. Cardy. Is there anything you wanted to say?
No, I think we did ask for BDO to do an advisory report to help us understand how to develop equalities and diversity. I'll just reassure members that we do have some statutory duties under the Equality Act, and we have met all of those, and we do meet all of those each year. So this is just a framework that the government provides for public bodies to help evolve their journey, and that's why we've done it. And as you can see, there's a lot of management responses to the recommendations of the things that we're going to do to help progress that journey. As a small authority, it's quite difficult. We don't have a team of equality officers. We are doing this as add-ons to the day job, but we do feel it is really important, and that's why we've made those responses to those recommendations.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Any Further questions on that? On EDI? Yes, Councillor Stamp.
A comment really, please. Page 239, we keep saying this, we're a committee system, not a cabinet system.
Yeah.
So in future, can the reports not use a cabinet system, we're a committee system, if you don't mind, please. Thank you very much.
And it's important to us that we are, isn't it, Councillor Stamp? It certainly is to me. Thank you very much for that. So now we go to management of section 106 funds on pages 257 to 270. Mr. Winter.
So again, just a brief highlight of this report. So it's a moderate opinion for both design and operational effectiveness, and that's generally driven by the two medium findings that are in the report. The scope of the review, obviously section 106 is such a broad remit that we focus the scope on this as the collection of payments under those agreements, and also ensuring that the funds are appropriately allocated in line with those agreements. That was our remit. We do note in the report that there are manual processes operating and monitoring that is occurring. We're not suggesting that there are numerous errors but it is open to human error. It's reflective of an organisation this size, and therefore investment in a system is possible, but actually at the moment, and as management have responded in this report, it needs the additional around the kind of the seal, etc., to take on board that, and maybe that will then give the requirement to invest in such a system. Some of the findings that we've included in here around the trigger points were actually more around that audit trail and clear documentation. We're not suggesting that they were missed, because obviously you'll see there in our report that payments were received when required. But it's more about that proactivity, especially if volume increases as well. And then the other key finding was more around the formalisation of approvals on section 106 spend. Again, this goes back to the greater clarity point around documentation. We're not suggesting that approvals on the finance system weren't there. It's more around those due diligence checks that are occurred before the funds are then allocated to the relevant project. It's about having that checklist as been recommended and accepted by management in there to offer that additional evidence of that thought process. So that was all I was going to say on that, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions to Mr. Winter, or shall we go to Ms. Althoff-Shoreland, who I know has got some things to say? Do you want to go ahead, Ms. Althoff-Shoreland, or?
There were some of the recommendations we've already done, so we've set out a process already. We've put a column in the housing spreadsheet because the two are linked, so that everybody knows when an application's got section 106. I mean, I know because I deal with it, but so that everybody knows now. We've set up a little working group looking at tightening up the governance arrangements about how we allocate the spend. We've already done that. So that'll be feeding back probably January into, I think it probably comes into this committee.
Lovely, thank you. Don't know, Mr. Winslow, if you've got anything you wish to add?
Hello. I don't have anything, Chair, to add further to what Ms. Althoff-Shoreland's already said.
Thank you very much. Best ask, just in case. So, any questions for Mr. Winter or for officers, members on 106? Councillor Stamp, please.
I said I might not say anything tonight. I do apologise.
But I'm glad you are, so thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually pleased to actually read this because we have been concerned about section 106s and the possible missing and the trigger dates for quite some time. I've read the report and that it is going to be put on the spreadsheet, so it's going to be easy to identify. So I congratulate you on that. It is a bit of a shame that the findings, and I won't go into it because members have most probably read it, that we haven't had some supporting documentation, authorisation documentation. So whatever was identified, and I welcome this report for being thorough, because we don't want to lose our section 106 monies because we get hardly anything to improve our infrastructures for this district as it is. So I actually welcome you for that. And Anne, I should be looking forward to when you actually do produce these sheets and that we can all see them in the future. So no questions, but well done, and thank you very much.
That's great, thank you. Positivity, lovely.
I told you I'm positive.
I know, positive vibes. That's what we like. So then we move on to sickness and absence management, please.
Yep, so I'll be taking this one. So this is on page 271 of the pack. And the purpose of this audit was to ensure the council has adequate controls and triggers in place to monitor and manage sickness absence effectively. This has received a substantial assurance rating both for the design of the control framework and the operation of controls, which is a very positive result and shows there are strong controls in this area. Lots of areas of good practice, including a sound sickness absence management policy, clear training provision, testing confirmed cases are dealt with in accordance with council processes, ongoing monitoring and reporting of sickness trends. There's only one low priority finding about making sure policies are appropriately reviewed, and that's it really. So it's a very strong area with a very positive assurance rating.
Good stuff. Thank you. Ms. Cardy, anything you wanted to add?
No, only that it shows that we're very robust in our absence management, which we need to be, because obviously sickness is a cost to the council and has an impact on colleagues that have to fulfil the person's role that's off. But at the same time, we really support people that need support during their sickness. The one recommendation we've actually looked at, so we'll be feeding that back to BDO after this meeting as we look at the actions going forward. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Again, more good news. Members, any questions? No, thank you. Oh, hello.
Can I just say thank you for this report as well. No questions as such, but it's great that we've got the reporting procedures. Where does it come into play that we're actually doing the things to make sure we're keeping our staff and our staff happy? I know you're going to turn around and say it's not for this, it's for the performance or something to come to us. But it does concern me. We can have every little thing in the book to say that we're following processes and procedures, which is exactly what you've just said. And, you know, that is great. But, I do know that this council, as in a lot of councils in the country, have got sickness problems. So is there anything that we've learned from this Miss Cardy, that all these forms that we fill in and the policies we've got that we can learn from for our staff to make it better?
Thank you. I think it's about just putting all of the things, although it is a lot about process, there is a lot of support as well, and that's why we have an employment assistance programme. We have mental health advisors that are trained within the council. So looking at this policy and the procedures, it's not just about looking at how we look at the staff that are sick, it's also about the mechanisms that are in place to help people manage in work during periods of sickness or health, and also to get them back into work quickly and support them with things like phase return, and then, as I say, the employee assistance programme, all of the wellbeing toolkits and seminars that we have access to. So it's very much providing support to employees as much as managing them when they do go off sick.
Great, thank you. Any further questions? No, marvellous. So I think that takes us to licensing.
Yep, that's me as well. So licensing is the last report. That's on page 283 of the pack. And the purpose of this audit was to ensure there are sufficient controls over the management of issuing and maintaining licenses, and whether there are appropriate controls in place to ensure effective recovery of fee income. So this got an assurance rating of moderate for both the design and the operation of the controls. Our work highlighted 5 areas for improvement. So there's 1 high, 3 medium and 1 low priority recommendations. The high priority recommendation was around making sure DBS and medical checks for vehicle licenses are consistently reviewed. The medium recommendations were regarding ensuring supporting evidence is always saved in a central location, checking rateable values for premises licenses to ensure correct fees are paid, and ensuring public registers of licenses are up to date. And then the low priority recommendation is just around regularly reviewing and updating policies. I think the council's already taken action to implement some of these recommendations, and which is a positive sign. I'm I'm happy to take any questions.
Brilliant. Any questions for Mr. Winter on that? Or should we go to Mrs. Wheatley, who's going to give us the officer response? Mrs. Wheatley, I think.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening, members.
Good evening.
I'd like to update this committee on the licensing report recommendations in terms of progress to date and actions we intend taking over the coming weeks. We have Mr. Paul Brooks, who is the Director for Sustainable Communities from Chelmsford City Council in the Chamber, and Mrs. Shirley Hall from Maldon District Council on Teams, who are both happy to take questions. Mr. Brooks provided an earlier response to members on behalf of Chelmsford City Council, which includes comments on the report recommendations. The audit has been particularly useful in identifying areas of improvement and where additional monitoring, training and process improvements are necessary. Over the next 4 months, Maldon has a dedicated resource who will be working towards improving the current licensing process to enable us to accord to the recommendations set out in the audit report. They will be working closely with our colleagues at Chelmsford City Council to deliver these and put in place the necessary system enhancements, reporting and monitoring. In relation to the 5 report recommendations, for the first one on the DBS and medical record monitoring, this will be the first recommendation we will focus on. We'll be working on various system improvements to ensure that the necessary checks are completed by introducing prompts activated by the systems, which will become mandatory. We will include an activity within the service plan to ensure a measurable action is reportable going forward. For number 2, which is insufficient application evidence, training is proposed for this recommendation and is key to the proper indexing of documents. Chelmsford City Council are currently preparing a validation checklist for all licence types, which will be incorporated by IT development of the systems. This will require IT resource, and so those conversations will be ongoing. For rateable value checks, the recommendations are already underway. Customer services are completing a project by reviewing existing licensed premises and checking these against our current rateable values. System improvements are proposed to require rateable value checks for renewals on new licences going forward. For the licence register updates, there is currently a system report that collects data manually once per month. We're exploring a system prompt to ensure that the report is drawn at the same time each month. Other processes and training requirements will occur as part of this recommendation to ensure the system data is accurately captured by Chelmsford City Council. And finally, for the out-of-date policies, the draft review of the gambling policy is being presented to the Licensing Committee on the 28th of November. A consultation period of 28 days will follow, and the results of which will be included in the final version, which will go back to the Licensing Committee in the new year. We are working to align the policies with the review period of Chelmsford City Council policies, as this will ensure they remain current and are reviewed by the licensing team in accordance with the SLA. We also intend to generate automatic reminders via SharePoint in advance of the policies expiring. So that's it from me. We're now happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does Mrs. Hall have anything to add? No? Marvellous. Oh, hello.
No, sorry. No,
anything to add? No, lovely.
Quite clear, so nothing to add.
Brilliant. Thank you. Mr. Brooks, anything?
Really, I'd just like to say that when we received the audit, we were concerned because of the level of service we provide for Maldon in licensing. This appeared to fall below what we would expect, and we're especially concerned about the. It looked like that we were issuing licenses without having all the information necessary, and actually the work we've done since it transpires that we had all that information. We were just holding it in separate files within the Maldon system. So it wasn't as serious as what Chelmsford Council first appeared. And really, we circulated that note just to reassure members of Maldon that we do take this seriously. We always provide a high quality service to Maldon District Council, and we will continue that. And just, I'm here to reassure you that that's the case.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Brooks. So, members, questions for anyone? Councillor Spenceley.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I was alarmed. As a new member of the Licensing Committee, I read my glossy magazine and read about rogue taxi drivers. So yes, I did get a bit alarmed, and it's reassuring to see that the controls really were in place, and this is simply a case of miscommunication. So I'd like to thank the auditors for highlighting this, and our own team and Chelmsford for responding so robustly, because these kind of safeguarding issues are the kind of things that could go very badly wrong, and it's just good to see that this certainly wasn't anything like as bad as we thought, and that now we've got systems that speak to each other and give us the reassurance we need.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Spenceley. Any other members? No. I think it's an indication of how thorough all these reports have been, that we have so few questions. So again, many thanks to everybody who has come and provided information. So the recommendations, members, on page 71 are that we consider, comment and approve the following. Little 1, progress report at 9A. Little 2, follow-up of recommendations report at 9B. Little 3, cybersecurity at 9C. Little 4, equality, diversity and inclusion at 9D. Little 5, management of section 106 funds at 9E. Little 6, sickness and absence management at 9F. And little 7, licensing at 9G. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Members, any other comments or questions, or are we happy to agree by assent? Fantastic. And again, thank you very much to all the officers and our guests tonight. Thank you very much for your contributions. Much appreciated. Which brings us on to item 10, any other items of business that the chairman of the committee decides are urgent. I have none. So, members, thank you very much for your contributions this evening, and I now draw the meeting to a close at 8:36 p.m. Thank you.